Why do you keep fighting?
There is a tempest in me.
You have fought long enough, Galadriel. Put up your sword.
Without it, what am I to be?
Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. So we have the Lord of the Rings show, which has been talked about for years, how it's going to be the most expensive TV show ever made. And I will say, Lord of the Rings this show was absolutely beautiful. I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan. Love those movies. Those are the movies I loved growing up. And then we had the Hobbit movies, which were movies I hated in my young adulthood. Now we have the Rings of Power, and it's set during the second age of the Lord of the Rings. They don't have a lot to go off. They go off a lot of the Tolkien appendix. We're going off it's about the origin of the Rings of Power, how we get these rings and all this stuff. But we're getting to some of the history, and the show is really we follow a bunch of different characters. Obviously, with Lord of the Rings, you're always going to have people walking, journeying, and all that kind of stuff. And so we're introducing all these different characters. And the show really starts us off with, we're leading with the character of Galadriel. We have a younger version of Galadriel, even though I think she is so kind of old in the show. Whereas, they're elves. They live forever. I think the show does a really good job of casting these characters, because when I think of Lord of the Rings, I think of Cate Blanchett as Galadriel. I think as Hugo Weaving as Elrond. And I think they chose good actors to play these characters. They remind me of those versions, but they're a much, much younger version of these characters as well. Galadriel's trying to get revenge for her brother. And, they're very different from the typical Lord of the Rings characters that we've seen. Because, we're used to those Hobbit characters, the Aragorn characters. They're the reluctant heroes. But this, she's like, no, I'm a badass. I know who I am. And I like the introduction of different story elements, like bringing in Numenor, and how eventually they're going to fall. How we introduce Sauron, and maybe I'm pretty sure Gandalf at the end when they're like, "You're not Sauron." He's like, and at the end whenever he says it's like, "When in doubt, follow your nose." Like, I was like, that's Gandalf, and it kind of explains why there's such an attachment from Gandalf to the hobbits that we saw in the Hobbit and Lord of the Rings series. The action was awesome. I thought there was some really cool action. Episode 6 of Lord of the Rings, I've been saying this for a little bit, but Episode 6 of Lord of the Rings, we have two fantasy shows on right now, House of Dragons and Lord of the Rings. I've enjoyed House of Dragon a little more than Lord of the Rings at the current time. But Episode 6, I think, is the best episode of both series thus far. I mean, what an episode, how we introduced this epic battle, and then the creation of Mordor. And it had how the season ends by creating the first 3 rings, the Elvish rings. And I'm curious where we're going with the show. They've already started shooting season 2. Lord of the Rings, the first 2 episodes, for me, it was a hard watch. Then, as the show got better towards the end, and I'm fine with starting off slow, and then at the end, I'm just like, I'm ready for another episode, and that's what I loved about this show. So overall, guys, Lord of the Rings: Rings of Power completely delivered. It wasn't as good as I was hoping it was going to be, but I think by the end, I was like, I really like this show, and I'm looking forward to see whatever the hell happens next. So, guys, check out Rings of Power if you have not. Good job, Amazon. So, guys, have you seen Lord of the Rings or Rings of Power? Where your thoughts comment below. Let me know. And, guys, if you like this video, click thumbs up, subscribe to more. Take your friends, but easy nation. All too easy.